Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Your Longevity Blueprint podcast. Today I have on as a guest Veronica Worley. Veronica helps men and women age gracefully and beautifully by getting to the root cause of belly fat, energy loss, hormone, and mineral imbalance. She specializes in mineral imbalance, which can be the root to weight gain, energy loss, and hormone imbalance. Once tested, you can learn the exact process needed to get the body back into balance and overcome disease and symptoms. She does this by using functional lab testing, food and lifestyle changes so you can get well and stay well. As with many holistic practitioners, Veronica's path to helping others feel better began when she herself started having many health issues a few years ago. Doctors couldn't figure out the cause of her symptoms. After discovering that a mineral imbalance was at the root of her fibroids, migraines, brain fog, hormone imbalance, depression, and energy loss, she chose natural methods and worked to overcome her issues, and she lost 30 pounds in the process. Putting her nutrition background to work, she began a lifelong study of nutrition, holistic wellness, and functional medicine, and since has helped many people get well and lose weight using mineral balancing, nutrition, and lifestyle changes. So, welcome to the show, Veronica.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, tell me your story. So, as your bio alluded to, you had some health issues that sounds like mineral imbalances were an answer for. So, tell us how you got into being a holistic practitioner and about some of your health challenges.
Wonderful. Well, I have a background in nutrition, so I've always been interested in eating healthy. Not that I've always eaten healthy, but I've have that interest and have strived to eat healthy the last few decades, especially raising my children and all of that. And so it was surprising to me that after a move that I began to have some serious issues. And so I realized that because of that, not being able to walk, it's a long story and you probably don't want me to get into that, but after a move, it was extremely stressful. I was on my feet, my plantar fasciitis, heel spurs flared up, and I couldn't walk without a wheelchair for about 10 months. First 10 months we lived there. And that, of course, brought on extra 20 pounds. And, you can't unpack, you can't meet people, you can't find, your way around and so forth. And that's when I realized that because of that, I had really let my nutrition skills slip.
Sure.
Ordering pizza is easier than getting on your feet and cooking. So I determined that I'm going to go back and restudy. And to make a long story short, my daughter graduated high school, and so that's actually how my business was born, because I realized that I'm not, she's off to college. I have time now. I can go back and pursue my nutrition. And I went back to school and became certified in functional medicine, and have been working that now for the past several years, because I know that as a result of mineral imbalancing and nutrition, that it's key to overcoming health issues.
So you intrigue me. So you make me want to ask, well, without telling us your whole story, which primary mineral imbalances did you have that were a solution for you?
Well, I had calcium and magnesium were two big ones for me. As a result, I had bone loss. And so that's why now I have a tendency to work with a lot of osteoporosis clients and bone loss. And that's sort of, I don't know if I call it my specialty, but I really do deal with that a lot because I have dealt with it and overcome bone loss in my own self. And that really surprised me because my years of eating healthy and nutrition, all the things that I applied to my diet and our family, I was surprised that I had ended up with bone loss. And
Sure.
I had these other issues too, which pointed to hormone imbalance and my stress. The adrenals was out wazoo, and stress is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And stress is probably the thing that probably brought on mineral imbalance, because when you're stressed, it really sucks a lot of the nutrients, especially things like magnesium, out of your body. So that when one thing becomes deficient, then one or more other minerals become deficient. So I had calcium, magnesium imbalance, and of course a host of others that I have now been working very diligently on.
We talk about that a lot on the show, how stress, well, I mention to my patients that it's the biggest hormone hijacker, but it also robs us of minerals, specifically magnesium. Most everyone is low on magnesium that I find.
I know. Same here.
Yeah. So let's get into mineral balancing. So tell us what that is and how you use that with your clients.
Sure. Well, mineral balancing is basically, it is looking at the minerals that have been secreted from the body within the last 3 or 4 months. Because hair is a soft tissue, it can accumulate these things. So that's why mineral balancing is a very good tool, because you're looking at the soft tissue and you're looking at the past 3 or 4 months as opposed to just what you ate yesterday, so to speak. And so mineral balancing is then looking at the ratio of these minerals together. Excuse me, we look primarily at the 4 main minerals, which are calcium, sodium, magnesium, and potassium. Those are the 4 main minerals our body makes up, is made up of those 4 the most, with calcium being the number 1. And we look at those, and then we look at secondary and tertiary minerals also. And those minerals are important because even though we need them in smaller, minute amounts, they still are affected if we have a calcium overload or magnesium imbalance, so to speak.
So,
and
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that if you have one mineral that is imbalanced, it can cause an imbalance in one or more other minerals. And then that can, in addition, create this cascade, if you will, of minerals. One after another starts to become imbalanced. And so that's why people will start with one symptom or one disease or an illness and start to get another one on top of that, because their minerals continually stay imbalanced and their body is becoming deficient. And then when that happens, sorry, one more thing.
Keep going, keep going.
And when that happens, then the body is looking for a replacement to those minerals. And what does it usually get? It usually will take on metals. And so we're all exposed to metals every day, in the air and in the food, in our environment, in our pots and pans. We have metals that we are exposed to. A healthy person naturally just kicks those out of the body. They're eliminated. But if a person is missing a mineral, say calcium, the body is looking for a metal to displace it, like lead. Calcium is displaced by lead in the body. And so then the body will begin to accumulate the lead so that it has something to use as a replacement.
And that's why we see many women with osteoporosis have heavy metal toxicities, and they do have higher levels of things like lead.
Yes, they do. Yes.
What's your primary means of testing then? Is hair analysis what you primarily use?
Yes, we use hair tissue mineral analysis for that.
Sure. Yeah. So I have to ask, what about like the hair dye and the chemicals and the things that individuals use? Are you getting, because you're getting a sample closer to the root, do those things not affect the sample?
Well, you have to be careful that when you get ready to instigate the test and collect your samples, that the client has not dyed their hair within the last 8 weeks.
Okay.
And so we usually wait. And we've had people have to wait 2 months or so before they can collect their samples. And other things, we're looking for being careful with if a person is in the chlorine pool a lot, to be careful, because that can affect the results. Also, we're looking at the person, what type of shampoo. If it's high in oxide or high in zinc, the person who has dandruff shampoos that they use, then that can affect it. So we ask all of these questions before instigating the exam or the test.
Smart. What about someone who just has bad water in general? Like I had to put a chlorine, charcoal filtration system in my home to get the chlorine out because the chlorine was so high in the water in our city.
Yeah.
Can that?
That's a good question. It probably wouldn't impact as much the actual hair as if you're washing your hair in the water. What would be more impacted is drinking the water. Right. And again, we stress the importance of drinking good, healthy, distilled water.
Sure.
Filtered water.
So once you run this hair analysis and you determine what minerals are out of balance, what's the best approach to get them back into balance?
Good question. Yes. Well, we start with looking at results and looking at the ratio between all of the minerals. And each ratio tells us something about the person. So you're looking at, is it one, what each ratio we have sodium, magnesium. Well, that has to do with adrenals. And it has to do, so if that's very low or very high, then it tells me that this person has either a lot of stress going on in their life, and they have, or they're missing some minerals that are causing this. And then there's a whole list of symptoms that are associated with that. And usually when I read this off and I look at this and I read off the symptoms, the client goes, oh yeah. Intense, anxiety, panic attacks, all these things. And so we begin to address that by looking at their diet, looking at changes. How can we address stress? How can we address sleep, exercise? We look at all of those things first. And then we look to supplementing with minerals and nutrients that are, say, balancing for the body.
Sure. So do you find, you alluded earlier to, it sounds like even the fact that maybe you needed some calcium. Do you find that many women actually need calcium, or do we have kind of an overcalcification right now?
That's a really good
Postmenopausal
example.
women, yeah.
Yes, that's a good example because most of the time she goes to the doctor and gets tested, and sure enough, she has bone loss, osteopenia, osteoporosis. And what does the doctor do?
Say, go take some cheap calcium from Walmart.
That's it, 1,200 milligrams of calcium and basis. Well, the bone strengthening exercises are good, but the calcium makes it worse if it's not balanced with the other minerals. And that's exactly what I find, that if I get a woman who has bone loss, more than likely she has very high calcium levels. And there's an imbalance in all of these. And according to the HTMA, the hair tissue mineral analysis that I run, if it's very high calcium levels, it's a loss. And that means that the body has all this calcium, but it doesn't know what to do with it.
Right.
It's not able to get into the cells. And so it just kind of roams around the body looking for a place to go. And calcium is one of the sharpest, if not the sharpest mineral. So again, you're looking at arthritis, and bone spurs usually accompany osteoporosis because the calcium is, and maybe even heart disease because the calcium is looking for a place to go.
I've talked about this in a different way in other episodes, just the importance of K2, and that K2 helps direct calcium into the bone matrix where it's supposed to go. Are you advocate for using K2 as well?
Oh, yes. K2. We also look at, according to what the test results say, look at B6. That's important for getting where it belongs in the cells. Also looking at boron and some of these other minerals like, manganese, making sure that it's in balance there.
I think boron gets a bad rap sometimes. I feel like, especially, I've heard some oncologists take patients off boron. What are your, we're going off on a tangent here, but what are your thoughts on boron? Do you use that in a lot of
I do use it. You have to be careful because it's very easy to take a boron supplement to increase it to highest levels. So usually what I tell clients, we'll just watch it. And I kind of know, I don't supplement with boron usually. What we work on are the first four minerals. Let's get the calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium in balance. And if after we retest in 3 months and we're still having some issues, we can either keep working on those four minerals, or we can then begin to supplement with boron. But usually it's just involved in a tablespoon or two of borax in the bathtub.
Okay.
A couple times a week. That's all that's needed.
Yeah. All right. After you treat a patient, then are you retesting the levels like 3 months later to see if they're back in balance, or what's the protocol?
Yes, I do encourage 2 to 4 months. You can retest as early as a month, but really at 2 to 4 months, because that's when the hair grows out and we're looking at the closest 1.5 inches to the head, back of the nape of the neck.
Sure. You mentioned that you lost weight, and all my female patients want to lose weight usually. So tell us how mineral imbalances affect our inability to lose weight and can hamper our body's ability to overcome health issues in general.
Oh boy. Well, this is a loaded question. As you know, weight loss is huge. I get more clients than any that come to me for weight loss. And usually what I'll tell them, that weight loss, losing weight, is not their fault necessarily. It's not because they've overindulged, although we all do overindulge from time to time. But it has to do with a mineral imbalance or something else going on in the body. And that mineral imbalance can point to what is going on in the body. So it can point to infections. If there are bacterial infections, if there are fungal overgrowth, if there are thyroid or female hormones imbalance, or adrenal dysfunction, all of that can cause these cravings, and it can cause sugar imbalance, sugar dysregulation, insulin resistance, and it can cause weight gain or the inability to lose. And of course, we know hormones, that's huge. A good indicator of a balance with stress is if you get the wide middle, the middle big tummy.
Muffin top, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, even so, and it can be hard, if you can touch it. That's the way what mine was. That was where I lost my weight the most, was in my belly, is because soon after that move, I mean, my waist just like increased, I think 10 inches. And I go back and I look at videos because I do a lot of cooking videos and things, and my waist is huge, and that's stress, right? And so stress then can cause mineral imbalance because it takes a lot of extra minerals out of your body, and it's a big spiral
Sure,
downward.
sure. So obviously we have to change the lifestyle, reduce the stress, but indirectly you're saying correcting the mineral imbalances helps with balancing the hormones, can help with treating infection, helps the adrenals, et cetera, to eventually help with the weight loss. So kind of indirectly correcting those
Yeah.
mineral
Yes.
imbalances will
Yes.
translate
Indirectly.
hopefully into weight loss for the patient.
Right.
Let's stick on the topic of weight loss because the holidays are coming up here. And so I know a lot of patients will gain some weight over the holidays. And I know, you, like you said, you have cooking videos. So I'd like to know some of your best tips to help people avoid that holiday 15 and stay healthy throughout
Ah.
coming holiday season.
Yes. Yes. And I have a lot of tips, and I've done talks on this before, and I even have some of these tips on my website that people can go to. But the best thing I can say is just concentrate, first of all, on eating a healthy diet. And you're looking at avoiding the processed foods and staying away from unhealthy fats, and trying to increase your vegetables, your fruit, your grass-fed meats, and avoiding too many carbohydrates, and certainly eliminating the bad stuff. That's the first place I would tell people where we want to start. Those, like we addressed, there's many reasons why we have issues with weight gain, but there's other things that people can do. I have a lot of party tips and things that we talk about with my clients. I talk about with my clients, and we discuss. But is that kind of what you're?
Yeah. Let's go through that. Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me pull up my notes here. So some of the things that I wanted to just share right now with you is, first of all, I would say, if a person is wanting to lose weight and to look good, first of all, get tested, right? We want to make sure that there's not any issues. If a person decides to, say, for instance, fast, or maybe intermittent fasting, which is a good tool that can be used for health and weight loss. But if a person has a blood sugar dysregulation, I don't recommend it. So not everyone can do, say, intermittent fasting. And same thing with keto. A lot of people are using keto or paleo for weight loss, but again, get tested, because the person who struggles with the excess protein and fat, there could be one of two things. It could be that they are a slow oxidizer. And that's one thing the hair tissue mineral test tells us. Are you a slow oxidizer or a fast oxidizer? The slow oxidizer can't digest all that fat and protein very well. And so therefore they feel sluggish. They're probably end up gaining weight instead of losing weight. So we look at that. That's why testing is important. Paleo, the fast oxidizer needs the protein and the good healthy fats to be able to sustain the higher metabolism.
And does that change? Can you be a low and then change to a fast?
Yes.
Can that change? Okay.
Yes, it changes. And that's the purpose of a mineral balance, is to get the slow, fast oxidizer in balance.
Okay.
Yeah. And a good tip is always start your day with no carbs, right? And this is probably well known by now. But, our old standby breakfast of bagels and muffins and cereal and toast. I hope that's going out of style, but there is still a lot of people. I get a lot of clients that like their toast in the morning, or their bagel, and feed their children the sugary cereals and all that. And that's really the worst thing you could do.
It is. And I just couldn't, I literally don't know how people can do that, because I would just crash after, like my brain function, and I think is that how all these people feel who eat, eat that crappy or not? Or do they feel crappy all the time and that they've just adapted?
Yeah,
exactly. I totally agree. That's the worst way to start breakfast, a sugary donut with,
oh my goodness,
caffeine and
oh my goodness. I know. Yeah.
Totally agree.
And as a person's insulin resistance builds over time, it becomes worse, so that they can't even have a drop. First, maybe they might be okay as a child eating their cereal in the morning. They're probably still going to have a drop, right, of energy But the insulin resistance builds and gets worse over time, which ends up creating, as you know, heart disease and diabetes and a lot of these issues. So yeah, it's a lot of people don't notice because they, are so used to it. But yeah, starting your day with good healthy protein, get good healthy carbs, and I recommend vegetables to me. And my clients look at me, vegetables for breakfast, but sure. I mean, sauteed peppers and onions and some tomatoes and put some broccoli in there and have that with a couple of eggs. That's a great breakfast right there.
Agreed.
Good fat, healthy fat in there. So it should be a balance. So each meal should be a balance of the macros, protein, carbohydrate, and fat. And again, there's testing you can do to figure out what proportion you need. If you're a slow oxidizer, you need a different proportion than a fast oxidizer. And that's what helps you feel a little bit better.
So many of my patients are gluten-free, and obviously we're advocating for lower sugar eating. So tell us, I know you have some cookbooks, but kind of tell us what your healthy substitutions are. So you kind of have 5 main categories that you recommend substitutions for. So first is gluten-free. So let's go over again. I know we've talked about this on past episodes, but why is gluten bad? So why should we be avoiding gluten?
Right,
And then
right.
what are your top substitutes for gluten in baking?
Yeah. Okay. Gluten-free is huge right now. It's a big deal, and people are promoting it everywhere. And I do recommend that my clients go gluten-free. Gluten is a grain that is very inflammatory, highly inflammatory to the gut. And we eat gluten in our society with every meal, every snack, and you grow up eating gluten. So no wonder by the time you get to be 40 years old or even younger, you start to have issues with your gut and digestive issues. And so gluten is very damaging to the gut. As you know, leaky gut is when you have the intestinal permeability, and the cells eventually begin to open a little bit, and allows particles to go through that and that recirculating over and over the food and toxins. And so this again affects the liver and creates all kinds of diseases and things. So not pleasant, not fun at all. Some people, when I test them for food sensitivities or for gluten, they don't have any sensitivities. They're able to eat wheat and they're able to eat gluten. But usually these are the people that stay away from it anyway, right? And so I tell them, use caution. I don't recommend it. If you can at all be gluten-free, use caution and, eat it once in a while. But most of us don't know we have a gluten intolerance, right? 8 out of 10 of us are walking around eating gluten and don't even know that we have an intolerance, and then it's building up inflammation. So, as far as substitutions, I don't really recommend the gluten-free products. I just don't think they're healthy. I never buy them. The only gluten-free products I buy are the spaghettis and pastas,
Sure.
because it's 100% some other grain. They don't have all the fillers and all the things in there, but the gluten-free breads, the gluten-free cookies, and all that has so much sugar and fat and things in there to make them tasty that they're not necessarily healthy. But rice is a good substitute. We can have rice instead of bread with our dinner. We can have quinoa. That's a nice substitute. We have a lot of different flours now, and a lot of different even pastas that are made from bean products. Have you tried them?
Mm-hmm.
They're
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
they're
Not
actually
bad.
quite they're quite delicious. And I think you have to change your taste buds. I mean, of course, it's not going to taste like white flour pasta, right? But those are some nice substitutions.
Wonderful. What about sugar? Obviously, sugar is on earth. So
Yeah. What about sugar?
what about sugar is bad, and what are the substitutes that you recommend?
Right. Well, sugar is the number one thing that is just very difficult, I think, for people to give up, even gluten. I think giving up sugar it's so addictive, and it affects us in so many different ways. It affects our blood sugar. It affects our ability to heal. It feeds cancer. So people who have cancer shouldn't be eating sugar. And it can even cause cancer, if a person overindulges in those sorts of things. So sugar all around, there's never, in my mind, never any reason to eat sugar except for the taste. That's something that we have to find substitutes for. So I raised my children without sugar. We didn't have sugar. I haven't had sugar in my house for years and years now. They were raised, they know, not that they don't eat sugar now. They're grown, both of them are grown, but but it was something that we had just learned over the years to stay away from sugar and find substitutes. And there is a substitute for almost every treat out there that I found. Now, I
Sure.
haven't sit and made all the sweet treats there are, but you find a substitute most of the time.
So what are the sugar substitutes that you recommend?
Okay, again, it depends upon the person's situation, their health issues, and so forth. So we're looking at stevia. I really like stevia. That's my go-to.
Okay.
It's low calorie. It's healthy for you if you make sure you eat the right kind. I mean, there's a lot of stevia that has a lot of fillers in there and things, but stevia in general is healthy, and I think that's a good one. When I bake, I use maple syrup or honey.
Sure.
And those are healthy. Now, mind you, they do have sugar in them, right? They turn to a sugar some in your body, but they are higher in minerals than white sugar, and of course they're a little bit lower on the. I forget which one's lower. I think maple syrup might be lower.
I don't know. Yeah. In one of your recipes, I saw you had put prunes for use in pumpkin pie. Have you used that? Have you? Yeah, I've never done that.
Yeah. You soak them. Yeah, you soak them and you make a puree out of them and use that in place of sugar. And actually, it's your nice moisture too. So, sure. Prunes, you can use raisins, but again, raisins are very high in sugar. So if you're trying to watch your glycemic index, so just be careful there. If you're diabetic or you have sugar insulin dysfunction, then you still have to be careful about using fruit and natural food products.
Right. What about fats? So what oils are bad? Which oils should we be using?
Yes. Okay. This is a big one too, but hopefully by now people are starting to realize that we need healthy fats. Coconut oil. I took coconut oil. I think that's a great fat. That's very good for your body, your heart, and it's actually very good for weight loss. Coconut product. It is one of two products or one of two foods that contain lauric acid, mother's milk being the other one. So it's a very, very good for inflammation. And I could go on and on about coconut products. Coconut oil, olive oil, avocado oil, palm seed oil. Those are all good oils to indulge in.
Sure.
And there's others. Any of the nut oils I think are good. You want to stay away from cottonseed oil and the vegetable oils and some of those oils that
that'd be like
trans fat.
Soy, canola,
vegetable oils. Yeah.
Yep.
Cottonseed oil. Yeah.
What about dairy? Are you for or against dairy? What are your thoughts with dairy specifically?
Well, again, I do ask my clients to stay away from dairy, and we look at the food sensitivity test too, and that's a huge tell right there. Should we avoid dairy completely or not? For the most part, dairy is a difficult thing. Most people have some sort of a food sensitivity or inflammation causing ability. I don't want to use the word ability, but they cause inflammation by taking on dairy products. Some dairy products are better than others. So, for instance, you're looking at sheep milk and goat milk are better. They're still dairy, but they're a better, less inflammatory product. I laugh because I was just reading this morning an article about camel milk. So, I guess that's becoming the thing now. I've never tried it. Have you?
I have. I don't think I have, but I've heard of it, read of it.
So anyway, that would be interesting to try. They say it tastes just like milk, but dairy, yeah. So it causes most of us issues.
So individuals many times come to me thinking, well, I need to have my cheese because I need to get my calcium. I need to get my vitamin D. They think that is important. And my response to that is normally, milk doesn't have that much vitamin D. I mean, one full glass has like 100 IUs. So you'd have to drink 20 glasses of milk a day to even get to 2000 IUs, which is very inflammatory. You'd have a gut ache. Nobody wants to do that. So there's really
Exactly.
not that much vitamin D in milk. Yes, there's a little
Yeah.
bit, but and calcium wise, you can get calcium from the milk alternatives. You can get calcium from eating a big green leafy salad. Right. So most of us,
Yep.
I think, are who are eating healthy, right, are getting calcium from our
Right.
diets. And thus I don't think we need to add dairy just to get
No, no, I
extra
agree.
calcium. Yeah.
And actually, there have been studies now that show that that the calcium that we find in dairy is hard on our digestion. We don't digest it very well. So we think we're drinking all this milk and eating all this cottage cheese and we're getting all this dairy, and you're getting some, but the body finds it difficult to digest, and you're not getting as much as you think.
I can't reference the study right now because I don't know off the top of my head, but I've seen studies showing those who consume more cow's dairy products actually have more bone loss than those who
Yes,
don't. I know
absolutely.
those studies exist. I have seen them.
Yes, yes, I've read them, and
Yeah.
I quote them to especially my osteoporosis clients, because they think they're doing a good thing, and they're not really.
Right. So let's go back to some of your juicy tips. So what are some of your best juiciest tips? Or you actually also said you have a um, non-party day tip or something earlier.
Yeah.
Can,
Yes. Okay. Let me grab up my. Okay. So we're looking at tips. I did a whole series on this last year on my website, and also but my Facebook page and my social media. But tips on making it through the holiday really has to start with a plan, right? You have to have a plan to how you're going to deal with parties and how you're going to deal with all the temptations. Getting to the root of your issues. If you have issues, is huge. First of all, again, the testing. If you have blood sugar dysregulation, parties could be devastating for you. They could be very dangerous. It could put you out all the next day, right? So getting to the root, having a plan. So what are you going to do? What are your goals? And then I have a whole list of things under that you can do. Like if you're going to go to a party, there's some things you can do. I recommend, first of all, seeing if you can bring something. Ask the host, may I bring a dish? And then you can bring a dish that you can eat, so that at least there's one thing there that you can eat.
sure.
Now, this is hard for most people because we like the parties and we like the food, right? So you have to have the discipline to eat what you brought, and that's it. But most of the time, you can find something healthy at a party to eat. Another tip on party days would be to eat before you come, eat before you go. Just eat slight little meal or a snack that is healthy, that's going to fill you up, so that you're not going to the party starved. Because if you go to the party starved, you're going to eat everything, right? Yeah. So on party days, there's other things that I recommend. Eat healthy. The party is only a couple of hours, right, out of the day. So eat healthy on the hours that you're not at the party. Start your day with a good, healthy smoothie with lots of greens and good protein. And make sure you take your vitamins and your minerals throughout the day. Make sure that you're sleeping and you're napping, so that you don't go too tired. Studies show that if you're tired, we eat more, right? We don't, we fall to temptation more.
Sure.
So eat healthy through the day. Have good solid meals with good solid protein, so that when you go to the party, you're not as likely to overindulge. And if you do indulge at the party, the next day, if you've been eating healthy irregularly, it's easier to bounce back, because that's a lot of our downfall is the next day, right? Don't do what I did for years and keep on eating. Keep on eating the bad stuff the day after and the day after and the day after, saying, "Okay, I'll start tomorrow. I'll start tomorrow." Oh, eat before, and if you're preparing something for the party, don't taste it, because you've got to watch your snacking, right? If you're tasting it, then you're going to end up eating it and eating it and eating it. So those are just some of my tips for party days.
Sure. Sure. What's your 80-20 rule?
Ah, this is actually a rule that is pretty popular in China. It came from China. So the Chinese have a rule where they eat for 80% full and stop with 20%, a little bit more room. So when you're eating a meal, stop at 80%. Right? You stop and make physical signs or verbal signs that you're done. We all have that. I believe we all know that when we eat, there's a sign or a time during the meal that we know we're done, right? You have that feeling, I'm just done. But what do? We keep on eating, right? Because it's there, or the waitress keeps bringing us more bread or something to snack on, or we want dessert. But stop at 80%, even though you could eat 20% more.
Sure. I've heard that several times before. So what are your tips on overcoming sugar cravings?
Oh boy, this is a whole nother series, a whole nother talk in and of itself. And I have a whole series on my website that I did a few years ago on sugar cravings. But sugar cravings are actually, it's very seldom does it have to do with a person who's overindulged. Sugar cravings usually mean that there's something else going on in the body and that their diet is poor. And number one, I would say sugar cravings has to do with, you're eating the wrong foods at the wrong time. So if you start your day with carbohydrate, such as a bagel or toast or something, then that sets you up for having cravings later on. So every 2 hours, what happens is your body becomes where it needs that sugar, because toast turns to sugar, right? Any kind of white starches turns to sugar. And so you end up eating it all day long. So that is one thing, starting your day well. But sugar cravings there's a whole host of reasons why we have sugar cravings. It could be thyroid, it could be stress. We eat more when we're under stress and it causes us to need that energy. Look over here at my notes here. Probably the biggest, I would say, besides eating the wrong types of foods at the wrong time of the day, would be nutrient deficiencies. So our body is looking for something. It's looking for that, whatever it is. And have you ever gone to the pantry, or you've eaten a big meal? Let's say you've eaten a big meal and it's full of fat, and you've eaten a big meal and you're just so full. And then 15, 20, 30 minutes later, you go to the pantry or the refrigerator and you're looking for more food. So what happens is that we're eating the wrong kinds of food at our meal. We're filling up on not the nutrients. We're filling up on the good stuff, the fat, the carbohydrates, the meat, but we're not getting the nutrients our body needs. So we go to the pantry and our body is still looking for something, even though our stomach is full. I know, I've done it. My clients tell me they've done it. So nutrient deficiencies are huge. Blood sugar imbalances, which are actually caused by sugar and carb overindulgences. There's bacterial overgrowth, fungal overgrowth, candida. If a person has candida, their sugar cravings more than likely.
You got to feed that beast. And I have a lot of patients who have had yeast overgrowth, and they do crave sugar. They have to constantly feed that.
Yeah.
Looking at your tongue, if your tongue is coated even mildly, although some of my patients have very furry white tongues, that can be suggestive of yeast overgrowth. We can actually culture that to confirm if that's yeast. But
interesting.
A lot of my patients where I look to see if they have, from a symptom questionnaire standpoint, symptoms of yeast, but then there are other suggestions on their skin that may guide me into knowing that they have yeast overgrowth. And so we do have to stop feeding the beast. We got to get rid of the sugar.
Exactly.
Which can take a while. You're not going to just get rid of yeast overgrowth or stop eating sugar overnight. It can take weeks to months. It takes a long time.
It takes a long time to get rid of it and get it out of it. And it's hard. You crave sugar because you feed the beast. Yeah.
Yeah.
And same
time and time again, I see with my patients, when we eventually get them through the withdrawal and we treat yeast, many of their sugar cravings go away, and they say, I don't even have any anymore. They're just gone.
Yeah.
They're literally not there. So I would agree that yeast overgrowth can be one of the top.
It's huge. It's huge. And that's usually one of the first questions I ask when they say they have sugar cravings. We explore candida or fungal overgrowth. Bacterial infections also can cause sugar cravings. And I know a couple of years ago, about 2 years ago, I started having terrible sugar cravings. And I wasn't paying much attention because we had just moved and I was busy. And it got so bad that I was actually getting in my car and going to the store to buy sugar, which is not like me. I don't even eat sugar usually, but that's what I was doing. So finally I said, wait, something's not right. So I tested myself and found out that I had not only a couple of bacterial infections, but I had a parasite. And once that parasite was gone, I mean, it was like, bam, sugar cravings were gone. So again, they feed off of that. So
Agreed.
huge
So that's definitely something to look into. A lot of patients ask, well, why would I have bacterial overgrowth, or why would I have yeast overgrowth? And I, speaking to yeast specifically, I have a lot of patients who have taken antibiotics throughout the course of their life, whether it was at birth, whether they had childhood ear infections, whether they've had respiratory infections or acne as an adult, or UTIs or whatnot. Many patients take antibiotics not thinking much of them, but these effects accumulate and impact our microbiome. And then, of course, yeast is opportunistic. And so it can take a while to rebuild the gut health, but that's a huge part of helping with insulin resistance, but getting those sugar cravings down as well. So functional medicine providers can use a variety of tests to help with getting at the root cause of the sugar cravings, and again, help you rebuild your health.
Right, exactly. And medications too. A lot of medications can cause that bacterial microbiome to be upset.
They absolutely can. Specifically, reflux medications.
Oh my goodness,
those are the worst.
But we won't
go off on a tangent.
We won't go there.
So, what would your top longevity tip be?
Ooh, well, I certainly believe in the power of food. Hippocrates said it right. Let food be thy medicine. So that's the first place we stress is eat healthy, avoid the processed foods, and avoid the junk foods, and eat lots of vegetables. I recommend 8 to 10 servings a day of fruits and vegetables. So
what's a good recipe, or how do you incorporate that? So you mentioned breakfast, like with an omelet, or how else do you incorporate your vegetables?
Yeah, I do smoothies. I put 3 to 4 cups of greens and maybe even some of the vegetables in there in my smoothies. I do juicing. I juice vegetables. Don't do it every day, but I try to. That's a great way to increase your nutrients there. Again, you have to watch the blood sugar dysregulation and all of that. But, and of course, not the fruit, but the vegetables. Lots of salads, big, huge salads. I mean, big salads. And then you take vegetables and you cut them up and you add them to your salad. So it's not just lettuce, not just spinach, not just romaine, but it's vegetables. And you're looking at all kinds of cruciferous and all kinds of dark colored, brightly colored vegetables like peppers and tomatoes and radishes. And very good. I also put a tablespoon or 2 of sauerkraut in my salads. And that's actually really quite delicious. It adds that salty, tangy, yeah. And of course, there's always a side of vegetables. So I always have at least 2 sides of vegetables with dinner plus a salad. So, and of course, my dinner, stir fries contain lots of vegetables anyway. And it's great. Soups are a great way to get vegetables. And it's really not as hard as it sounds. You first think about it, you think it's going to be difficult, but it's not as hard. And if you have cut up vegetables on hand, little things you can snack on during the day if you need a snack, that's another great way.
Wonderful. Well, tell us where listeners can find you, and I hear you have a free gift for our audience. So share with us what that is.
Okay. Well, Veronica's Healthy Living is my website, and I have lots of recipes and things on there for people to peruse as far as articles on my blog. Right now, I'm offering a gift of a link that I will share that with you, that you can share, where if you think you have a mineral imbalance, I have a quiz of over 40 questions that you can take. I believe actually it's 40 questions you can take to see if you are possibly suffering from a mineral imbalance. And that quiz will then take you to my offer, which is the HTMA, hair mineral tissue, which I'm offering at a special discount right now with a month. It's for $3.99 for a month of my services, a month of support, which is a really good deal.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and introducing our audience to hair mineral analysis testing. We haven't had anyone yet talk about that. So thank you for sharing that, as well as tips for keeping us healthy through the holidays. So thank you for sharing your knowledge.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it. Thank you.